I think this will go down in history as one of the biggest fuck-ups a fucking company has ever done. By far.
Concerned fans, known as Dragoons,
from social media for over a full month at this point.
I apologize for the silence. I've been in the hospital after an accident.
It sucked so much to be backstabbed by so many of them. They thought a certain someone would go scorched earth on 𝑚𝑔𝖊𝖆. I would, yeah. I would. But the reason I didn't was because I knew they would self-destruct anyways.
People will always be curious. They always want the truth. And then when they get the truth, they can't handle the truth.
I'm just disgusted. My biggest concern here is the human life that was almost lost. I don't give a fuck about the inner workings of the company and what is going on. My biggest concern, my biggest issue with this whole thing is the lack of remorse, the lack of concern for the human life that works for them.
This topic is a little out of left field, but I also wanted to talk about it since the drama has leaked over to most of the internet at large. Also, a few of my friends told me to cover this because of the fact that the story is crazy. So I decided to look into it. My editor and my friend Sora did research on this story that is taking the internet by storm. Hope you enjoy this video, as this story is even more complicated than we thought, and the reason I say so is because the story is still developing, and on top of that, there are still a lot of people involved in this ongoing situation. Before I continue with this, I want to make a disclaimer and say not to harass any of the talents at any point in time. A lot of these talents are victims of poor management, and oftentimes they get caught up in these affairs that they might not even be involved in. Trust me, a lot of the time these issues don't involve everyone in the company, but then again, even if the talents are involved in this, it is not okay to attack them. Oftentimes they are the small dogs having to face a big corporation. Many times the companies are willing to do anything and everything to save their own ass, and it can come at the risk of using the talents as sacrifices. This would be the case of 𝖭𝔎𝖕. In recent days, the company has been under heavy scrutiny due to them being in the eyes of the public. So, where does this story start? 𝖭𝔎𝖕 is a company that has been around since 2017, and during the year 2018, they were one of the biggest agencies alongside Hololive. 𝖭𝔎𝖕 has 175 active VTubers across 4 different languages as of 2024. They have a lot of people in the company, but it hasn't always been that easy just due to the fact you are going to need so many managers to manage more than 100 talents. Hololive in comparison has 86 active members, so 𝖭𝔎𝖕 has more than double the members. The company made strides to expand, but it came at the cost of mismanagement. The reason I say this is because of how poorly their English side has been mismanaged, and that's what we will be discussing. So this story starts with the first big controversy regarding how they mishandled the case of a now fired member, 𝖁 Lanza. This story is a bit convoluted and I'll explain what happened, so I'm going to give a brief explanation who 𝖁 is and why she is relevant, starting with her debut in 𝖭𝔎𝖕 to her departure. In December 2022, 𝖭𝔎𝖕 would reveal 𝖁-𝕍𝒐. The 7th wave of VTubers, and 𝖁 is the main focus among them, don't get me wrong. The others are all cool, but they are not really important, at least to the story. So she would go on to make an impact on her wave and would have pretty good success. 𝖁-𝕍𝒐 had lower numbers than previous waves, so they had big shoes to fill, and this would be apparent. Off the rip, since they would always be compared to the other waves who were more successful. Big shoes to fill, but they would work hard and make a name for themselves, but problems would arise when an announcement was made on February 8th. 𝖁 Lanza was suspended due to repeated misconduct as well as compliance issues. Remember this detail, this will come up later. So then, people would start to show concerns that this suspension was being dragged on for too long. So, then on March 10th, they would drop a bombshell and confirm their worst fear. 𝖁 was terminated only 2 months after her debut, making her career the fastest one in the EN side. 𝖭𝔎𝖕 made an official statement and said that she would infringe upon her contract. 𝖭𝔎𝖕 would give a list of her infractions, and she would play a copyrighted song on her stream. This was done when she played a song that was made by her coworker. This was as a way to support the song, and this was against company rule and was punished. Understandable. Then she would make an inappropriate comment toward a victim of SA. That was also understandable, and people were mad. One complaint that people had came from Twitter freaks when she was alluding to liking kids in this clip.
You know, who is not really a man, he's a boy, but I don't mind, you know, I like him small.
She was talking about a Shota-looking character from Genshin. I'm not going to talk about whether Shotas or lolis are actual children they're drawing. It's not that deep. Now, if an adult actually likes real-life kids, then we have a problem. It's as simple as that. Not much to it, really. So, I will talk about why this point is dumb later. Finally, another instance, she would get into trouble and would claim to have been sponsored by a brand on stream. Trust me, this one is funny. So, this sounds bad on its own without context. And to be frank, I thought that she was a criminal or the worst person ever. But soon, Sion would come back eventually and would give her side of the story. But she has been walking on thin ice just due to the fact that she probably signed an NDA. She would resurface again after months of silence when she was mentioned by another account, Sayu Okami, now known as Sayu Synchronicity. She would make a post titled, One Girl Story. I also want to make a disclaimer so people don't get confused. Sion and Sayu are two different people. They are close associates, so I'll make that distinction before people get confused. Sayu is just the messenger relaying what happened. The point of this was to explain the story of Sion. The link leads us to a 22-page doc that would give us a detailed account of Sion's story. Off the rip, a major reason why she was always butting heads with management was due to cultural differences. Even though Sion speaks Japanese, she is a Westerner, or at least she is more in tune with a Western audience. The cultural difference is a problem. Not saying that it's a bad thing, but it can sometimes misconstrue someone's intentions and actions, which can cause unnecessary friction between groups, not laying out the groundwork for why she was not well liked by the staff. The first one I will talk about is the fact she made comments that she liked kids. This was a joke. I'm funny? Yes. She was just commenting on the appearance of characters from Genshin. She has no real attraction towards underage boys, and this problem was never brought up by Ninja staff themselves. Then, Ninja and Sion came to the conclusion that they should split up because they were not going to reach a middle ground, and they wanted to leave on good terms with graduation from the company. This is something that idols and talents do in the entertainment industry. I don't know too much about this, but it's supposed to be a way to say you left on good terms. So the company lied and betrayed her by making her out to be worse than it was. And that was apparent if you see the content of the official statement. It makes her look really bad. Sion would say that the company blamed her for falsely advertising the company she wasn't working with. This incident happened when she would grab a bag and call it D's Nuts. Obviously, this was a joke referring to the meme, and the company had issues with it due to D's Nuts being a brand. This brand is still unknown to her, and she did it without causing any problems, but you see how the company is trying to make things worse than they are. This incident was an honest mistake. Sion is a loose cannon, and oftentimes she is prone to being inappropriate due to her dark humor. But the company seems to have it out for her. The company would essentially make this minor thing into something bigger than they were, and on top of that, her co-workers, who she thought were her friends, would soon turn on her. Many of her friends would say that they would try and stop her from going too far, and without context, this sounds bad, but it's kind of sad that the whole company turned on her, from management to her friends in the company. Sayu would reveal in a later stream that her fans didn't wish Sion well, and the fact that they would talk bad about her character solidified that no one cared about her. She revealed a lot of things such as her debut, which was planned and paid for by her. Now, this doesn't sound that bad, but you have to consider that these things cost more money for VTubers, and VTubing, it is accustomed to have a lore story behind your character. This is so you can fit into a character archetype, which sounds a little corny and a little out there, but it's all fun and games to get people's attention. It is a fun thing VTubers do in order to get people interested in your character, and offers up a lot of potential merch or future outfits that fit the character. Sion would also get some graphic designs and custom animations, and this company that hired her didn't pay a dime. Before her debut, she was in the red, and this sounds bad, but considering this company is worth easily more than 1 billion yen. Hololive in comparison does help pay for projects, and most of the time, they would also offer resources with the help of your manager. Ninja didn't offer this help even though they're a talent agency. One of the biggest bombshells that was dropped was that talents in Ninja Sanji receive a 1-2% revenue split from merch sales, which is stupid low considering they earned a lot of money. I want to say this is the second most popular VTubing company that makes so much money. This does not include the cut that they take from their YouTube channel. Other talents reveal that there is no base salary, which means that they have to make numbers if they hope to get paid. So in total, they earn much less than you think, as well as having to pay for projects like making music, events, and paying for most, if not all, commissions. Then, 𝖁 reveals a fact about her manager being a 2-week-old hire. Nothing against this manager, but they're untrained and unprepared for the job at hand, and this manager was in charge of 𝖁 and her 5 other co-workers from 𝖁-𝕍. Then she would also reveal that suspensions would be masked as little breaks for the talents, which doesn't sound bad, but Ninji punishes talents in secret. This was the reason why 𝖁 was gone for such a long time before a suspension that came after a while. She was not able to access her accounts for a while, so on top of being suspended, she was isolated from her friend group, which had only worsened her mental health on top of other personal issues going on. 𝖁 had her struggles, but it's sad to know that the company effectively left her in the dark during the suspension and would not hear about anything from them until her termination. Her manager and friends made statements against them. She would mention that 𝖁, another talent she was close friends with, would make her out to be a gaslighter. Her coworkers from 𝖁-𝕍 would say that she was a problem and wasn't cut out for the corporate world, which has some truth to it, but the manager played a part by mismanaging her and constantly shutting down her plans. Since 𝖁 spoke Japanese, she could bypass the need of the head manager of the English side. In a recent interview with False ID, 𝖁 explained that 𝖁's life in Ninji was bad just due to the fact that talents faced constant scrutiny when it came to getting permissions.
They're great people. They all are. And but at the same time, it was very toxic, there because of the mindset that everyone was forced to have, which is, I remember being told before by somebody who was, a senpai. They said, this is just how being in a company is. The amount of support, like if you wanted to do like a cover song or something, or if you want to do, like an original song, like would it be paid for? No. Anything support wise. I even heard that payment and stuff for conventions was bad for a lot of them. And it was like, they would be guaranteed to go to the convention, do a signing for a couple hours, but then they'd go over and they wouldn't be paid for like the overtime, things like that.
Managers who were supposed to represent the inside of Ninji didn't even speak good English and oftentimes needed an interpreter who was fluent in English and Japanese. The main manager from the Japanese side is responsible for funding as well as giving permissions for activities. She got into trouble for breaking this chain of command because instead of going through her assigned manager and interpreter, she went straight to the main branch of management. So this would cause her to be disliked by her management, and her personal manager was not able to help her due to their inexperience. She just wasn't abiding by established rules, which caused constant friction with the people around her, which was the reason others didn't have remorse for the ways things turned out. Plus, it was probably in some of her friends' best interest to not rock the boat if they want to stay in the industry. And it might sound fake, but not everyone is willing to risk it all and get blackballed from the industry. Even 𝖁 said that she doesn't hate that her friends didn't defend her. She was heartbroken that they had to stir up more controversy by saying negative things about 𝖁. They could have said anything else, but they didn't, and even Kodaka said that she didn't even wish 𝖁 well.
I've been in indie for so long. I've been doing my own statistics. I was learning, I learned how a lot of things worked, and I learned how a lot of analytics and things worked, and I taught them a lot of what I knew, and not a single person could say something nice. They were allowed to at least not shit talk. Kotoka said that she couldn't even wish her well. She couldn't even wish 𝖁 well. Like on stream is what she said. I saw her in person and became friends with her in private before we ever had anything to do with each other. I went out of my way to meet up and teach her secrets and tell her things before the debut.
This could be attributed to the fact that they were blindly loyal to the company, or they just weren't as close as 𝖁 thought. Don't send any hate to anyone, but one thing to note is that this industry doesn't always have people's best interests at heart, and sometimes it's just business. You got to remember, guys, that even you aren't willing to go through hell for a stranger. Say what you want, but there are people who would say they would defend 𝖁 to the end. That is only one perspective because others won't make that sacrifice, and that's why we can't really blame them. It's a tough choice to make And what makes it even tougher is the fact that their actions are being watched by everyone. This story is very heartbreaking, and the fact that things are not coming to light has helped people see that this wasn't a black and white situation, since a lot of the problems Ninja faces are ingrained into the company. Now, one thing I want to talk about is the fact that legally, 𝖁 could have sued the company and won. It's not that easy, and the reason why is because of money. 𝖁 in a recent stream said that the chance to sue them is possible, but it would be difficult just due to the fact suing is more trouble than it's worth, and keep in mind that 𝖁 and her friend 𝖁 have very little chances of beating $1 billion company in a lawsuit. Just because there wasn't a lawsuit doesn't mean that she is lying or hiding something. It's just legal cases are expensive, and the best thing she can do is whistleblow and call out the situation. But even then, it's a slippery slope for her to push through, and one misstep can set her back so much the end goal might not even be worth it. For now, what you can do is just let people know what truly happens behind the scenes. So please understand that things are difficult to navigate through, and the best thing that came out of this is the fact that people support 𝖁 and 𝖁 even after going through hell. She went through this alone and no one supported her. Actually, a lot of people went against her and sided with the company. But as of now, common consensus has changed in her favor just due to the fact that Ninja is on the chopping block now. A lot of people in the community now stand with 𝖁 and her mistreatment only recently, and 𝖁 also said that it sucks that people now only give her support. I'm not going to claim I had her back when I first saw the story, but it's sad to know that she was alone this whole time. Initially, I thought she was doing something wrong, but then the situation was far more complex than I thought. The only thing we can only wish is that the person behind 𝖁 is living a happy and fulfilling life without the company. She has moved on, and hopefully she achieves things she wanted to do. Now, 𝖁 did some bad things during our time, and management used this as fuel to damage her character. Now, the reason why I started with this story is because it is relevant to the current problems we're facing right now with the termination of 𝖁 Tatsuki. A lot of their mismanagement problems and attempts to twist the narrative have been going on for a while when their talents end on bad terms. Other talents had it bad, but left on decent terms. 𝖁 and 𝖁 just happened to be the ones who got it the worst. So, who is 𝖁? 𝖁 Tatsuki was the 20th most sub channel in the whole company and the most sub female talent from the English side. She stands at 765k subs. Meanwhile, the second highest female talent from the English side is 𝖁-𝕊𝖚 at 655k subs, a 100k sub difference. So she was a big deal. Not only that, but because she was with the company for 2 years, she is respected by VTubers, people in the VTubing scene, and artists alike. So the problems would arise during the Christmas time when 𝖁 would have problems getting permission to put up the song Last Cup of Coffee, sung by 𝕍𝕍, a popular Twitch streamer. This was because she apparently didn't get permission for the song to be released, but funnily enough, 𝕍𝕍 made a statement that she is fine with anyone making their own cover of her songs. So that wasn't the problem. Celine hit up Lily a year prior and asked for permission, and Lily was cool with it. Maybe the producer was maybe not cool with it? No, he was okay with it. He would also give a written statement saying he was cool with it. So now what excuse is there? She got the green light from the necessary people, so management was capping at this point. They were the ones who wouldn't let 𝖁 post it without their permission. Keep in mind, this project was a community effort that was made with the help of a lot of people, artists, and community members, and this was a collective effort that would be 𝖁's way of showing gratitude to the fans for everything. So understandably, she was fighting for her right to post this, and she said fuck it, and posted it without permission, and it was taken down, which angered management, and she would tell people to post it anyways. Because the money wasn't important, she just wanted everyone to see the video, even if there was no personal gain. This would be a tipping point for her, and then 𝖁 on December 27th, she would make a post saying that she was in an accident and was hospitalized. This was a concern for everyone, and 4 days later, she said she was discharged from the hospital. This would soon take a dark turn, but fans didn't know it at the time why. But 𝖁 would be gone for a whole month without a social media presence, as well as being removed from activities that she was supposed to be a part of. So similar to 𝖁, so people would fear that she would be the next talent terminated. So close friends and fans would raise concern over the issue and would be worried about her health. It was announced on February 5th that she was terminated, and later on she would resurface the same day under her old account, 𝖊𝑘𝑘. She wanted to speak her truth and that her visit to the hospital was not because of an accident, but because she tried to take her own life due to the toxic environment which allowed bullying. She felt neglected by management, and she did explain who was responsible for the bullying, and just said that her experience at the company was negative. But then 𝖍𝖎𝖏 would make a statement saying that Selen's departure was negligible to the company's bottom line. 𝖁 shot themselves in the foot with this statement. This wasn't the last time they would do this, but it would have some devastating ramifications as the fans would turn on them. People would go against the Livers, and 𝖁 would make another statement saying that she was problematic and was a difficult person to work with, and they also explained that Selen had made contact Any Color, the company behind 𝖁, and would explain that Selen was pursuing legal actions. Now, 𝖁 revealed that some talents as well as managers were responsible for bullying Selen, so they themselves admit that she was bullied and narrowed down the people who could be responsible. This was a bad move since they admitted to something horrible. So then the whole English branch was set on fire, and people would bring up how the company threw Selen under the bus the same way Sion was thrown under the bus. As well as Selen's statement, this is no longer a simple situation, this was far more than they thought because the decreasing mental health was directly caused by the company, and was made apparent that she was just an asset. The reason people were raising a storm was because Selen was the most popular and the most respected member. But with all this, there were two big cases in which the people involved shared similar stories when they were on bad terms with 𝖁. So now Selen wanted to drop the case and leave this up to the lawyers to solve her unfair termination and harassment, but 𝖁 would try to ignore the situation after their first statement and return to normal. People found it tone deaf in the fact that their next post was a merch drop including the now departed talent Len, but there was another incident that made this situation worse. Yet again, shooting themselves in the foot, and this time with a fucking explosive. So, on February 13th, 𝖁's talent, 𝖊𝖏 would appear in a live stream with two other members and would make an official statement on her channel and would talk about a legal document that was sent to Any Color. And now you're witnessing ground zero. With this incident, this was the worst misstep that could cost the company much more than they have already lost. Each member would say that Selen was truly a loose cannon and would constantly be at odds with the company, just making her out to be a villain. While no one was buying it, they made it worse as Elyra would state that the two talent Millie Parfait, 𝖁 and her own personal info was brought up in the legal document. Granted, even though we don't know what this document contains, we know that this is tied to her experience with workplace harassment. So even if Elyra and the two other girls are not responsible for anything, they still imply that they were responsible for something. So much so that they were brought up by name in a legal document. We don't know and we don't want to point fingers, but it's good to note that this document has a lot to do with their terrible experience, and to think that 3 people were named in this racist suspicions. 𝖊𝖕𝖊𝖃 and Vox Akuma, 2 of 𝖁's most popular male talents, would come out to say that Selen betrayed them and put them in danger. Vox in particular made a statement saying that there is no favoritism, which is funny because he's the most subscribed member of 𝖁 and 3rd most subbed in the company. Vox has had more activities greenlit, like his whole film, which is an hour long and based on the editing, visual novel, and many more stuff. This type of work isn't cheap and is likely something that requires a lot of moving parts as well as the company's permission, as well as Ike getting invited to a lot of events and getting more favorable treatment. Then Vox talks about how leaving the company is always an option and Selen should have done that. But you have to remember that there was probably a clause or two that would stop that, especially since Japan will always favor big companies over employees. This is a bit speculative, but it isn't out of the realm of possibilities to believe that people aren't allowed to put in 2-week notices and dip. Some talents that left would mention that they took a while before the company allowed them to leave. That's something to note, since people don't graduate whenever they want. There is a process, as well as potentially hazing people out of the company. This can explain why Sion and Selen were in the dark for 1 month. Because they are not allowed back to work, they don't earn money at that time, so then they are forced to leave and could lose employee benefits or even pay fines if they break their contract. See, this is why leaving the company isn't as easy as it sounds. Elyra is also favored by the company a little too much when it comes to merch drops. She is everywhere in comparison to some of the more talented and popular members. Her merch sales in comparison to her genmate from 𝖁 is night and day. Just look at those numbers, and the amount of events she's in are far more than her genmates. But the one thing that Vox said that has people turning their heads is when he mentioned he read the legal document thoroughly. The reason I say this is because the document was a sealed document meant to be seen by only the 𝖁's legal management team, as well as their lawyers. At no point in time did she allow people to view the contents within the document, and this was supposed to be a private matter that was left up to the legal team. The reason she even bothered making a statement was because the document contains her medical record when she was in the hospital for when she tried to take her own life.
What also happened a few hours later was that the official 𝐵𝑔𝖊𝖏 channel had their CEO apologize to the investors and said that the statement of Selen's termination and how it would affect their financials, and the conclusion was that it was highly inappropriate to call her graduation negligible, which made the situation worse as investors and other company heads pull out of their stock exchange because the CEO only addressed stockholders and disregarding anything that the livers, fans, and critics have stated about the direction that 𝐵𝑔𝖊𝖏 is heading towards, which put gas in an already bad dumpster fire that says that they don't really care about the people making our money, only about the end result of the outcome, which leads us back to what 𝖍𝖐𝑏𝖏/Selen have been saying about her time there.
One thing that Selen revealed was that it wasn't one but 2 attempts that she tried. The second one was at her lowest point in life, and she admits that she just couldn't handle all the stress going on in her life. The company tried to spin everything saying Selen is a problem, but the fact that she was driven to the point of self-harm speaks to the severity of her claims, as well as the fact that the company would essentially leave her fate in the dark. She would also state that she wasn't terminated until she was scrolling on social media on her personal account and found the announcement. So that could cause problems because she is from Canada, so laws are different from Japanese laws. One thing to note is the fact that 𝖈𝖃 doesn't allow companies to share information regarding personal info. The fact that Vox would state that he thoroughly looked at a document that has personal information about Selen. So now, Vox, Lyra, and Ike might get involved in a lawsuit they were never supposed to be involved in. The company is imploding due to so much mismanagement and they have lost so much money. Their stock went down more than 10% of their value ever since Selen's departure. This company has had a lot of mismanagement from the early days ever since they made the Japanese branch. They could sweep things under the rug and just chalk it up to the talent breaking some rules. People in the early days took it at face value and didn't care to question anything. But Selen was a beloved figure and she was respected by many, so when people heard the news they were up in arms, especially when the company was constantly throwing her under the bus and downplaying her struggles, as well as making it obvious she was seen as a disposable asset. People in the West are all about individuality and often hate things like workplace harassment. People obviously wanted to bring justice to Selen, who was wronged in so many ways. The story has yet to conclude, but I hope Selen is able to move forward from this rough patch in her life. But as for the story, it'll eventually reach a conclusion. For better or for worse, this will change the future of 𝐵𝑔𝖊𝖏, and they will need to change. Otherwise, they run the risk of losing more members. Let me know what you think in the comments. Leave a like and subscribe. Also, special thanks to Sora. Give a like and subscribe to his channel as well.